Borthakur IAS Academy প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা Borthakur IAS Academy.
Hello everyone, this is Funny. Welcome to Borthakur IAS Academy. This is our daily Hindu analysis class for 8 September 2021. Let us begin with the first article today. PM urges private sector to help improve quality in government schools. Now this is an important announcement, or this is an important step. See, one of the biggest challenges in government schools is lack of infrastructure. Not all schools suffer from lack of infrastructure, but each school has its unique set of problems. But uniformly, the quality of standard or the quality of infrastructure, the quality in a government school is considerably lower compared to a private school. Even if both schools are in the same pin code or in the same village, when you compare a private school in a small village with that of a government school, you'll always find the private school being far better in terms of quality and in terms of infrastructure compared to the government school. So, in line with the National Education Policy of 2020, which was announced last year, in a bid to shift Indian education from policy-based to participation-based, Prime Minister announced a set of initiatives. And the most important among them is seeking the help or asking private sector to participate in improving quality in government schools. So this is very important. You have to understand the shift here. The shift is from policy based to participation based. So in essence, what the Prime Minister of India is asking is, we need the society, we need particularly the private sector to get involved into our educational system, our government schools to be very specific, so that the quality of the institution goes up, right? I hope you understand. What is the biggest problem? Each school suffers from its unique set of problems, but the quality in government schools is considerably lower. It may be the education, it may be the access to needed resources. Whatever the reason may be, the quality is low. So this is where the participation based approach gets into the picture. Till now, we were very much focusing on policy-based system. Now we are shifting, or the NEP allows us to shift to a participation-based system, where the Prime Minister is asking, we need the involvement of the society in bringing the quality or improving the quality in government schools. And the important sector or the important section of the society that we need or we request to participate in this endeavor is that of the private sector. In line with that, Prime Minister has launched a few initiatives, and the most important one among them is called this portal, Vidyanjali 2.0 portal. Now, what is Vidyanjali 2.0 portal? This portal allows private donors, corporate social responsibility contributions, and volunteering activities as part of initiatives. Now you can go into that portal, you can either donate privately, or multinational companies as part of their corporate social responsibility scheme can take part or can contribute through this portal. Not only that, individuals who feel that they can contribute better by volunteering their services, they can also offer volunteering their services, or offer their services as a volunteering scheme through Vidyanjali 2.0 portal. Again, this is the most important announcement from yesterday's part of yesterday's announcement. Now the thing is, as I said, participation of society, particularly the private sector coming forward to contribute to increasing the quality of education in government schools, will certainly have a certain impact. In some cases, they might provide better infrastructure facilities. in some other cases they might provide better access to resources that particular school might need or required. So what this allows for is, through this participation you can address these quality issues in a systematic manner. Again, this shift is from a policy based approach to a participation based approach. Now, as a part of the same announcement, few other things were also announced by our Honorable Prime Minister. The first one is a 10,000 word dictionary for Indian Sign Language and a talking books project for visually challenged students. Again, see, you have Indian Sign Language and now they are launching a 10,000 word dictionary to support Indian Sign Language and understand Indian Sign Language in a better way. This will certainly aid. See, what is the biggest use of a dictionary? When you don't know or you don't have a proper understanding of the meaning of a word, the first thing you do is open your dictionary and look for the meaning or the definition of that word. Similar thing, this 10,000 word dictionary will allow similar type of access to information for Indian Sign Language. Second thing, talking books project for visually challenged students. So when you have a visually challenged student, their main way of accessing books is through audiobooks. But the problem with audiobooks is they tend to be very, very expensive. If you want to know how audiobooks are expensive, just go to online and find out the book, whichever book you have read the most, whichever the book you have liked the most, go and look for the audio version of the same book. The price is always high compared to the paper version of it. So these kinds of initiatives tend to reduce the cost roadblock to these visually challenged students. Now they can access the books they need, that they depend on. And also the third initiative that was announced is a teacher training program for early childhood education. Because when we talked about the national education policy in earlier classes, what was the thing that we emphasized on? The emphasis was on the better and the best foundation that can be laid in a child's early education or early schooling, so that they have a better chance of completing their education in higher standards. And also the numeracy issue, but the foundation is what ensures the child doesn't fall back or fail in upper classes, which tends to be the highest number of cases or the highest reason for students dropping out of higher classes in schooling. So not only that, a standards setting authority for Central Board of Secondary Education was also announced. As I said, the important concept for this article is the Vidyanjali 2.0 portal, which allows private donors to donate through this portal, which allows multinational companies to contribute through their corporate social responsibility. And if individuals like you, if students who are willing to give their time to support other government schools in your region, you can offer your services voluntarily through this Vidyanjali 2.0 portal. Again, the significant shift is or focus is from a policy based approach to a participation based approach. Now the second thing that we have to point out here is he kind of congratulated the teachers and the parents for making the online mode of education as part of students' daily life. So whenever we talk about this online educational system or the online educational teaching methodologies, the first thing that comes to the mind, particularly in our country, is the digital divide. See, there are empty number of advantages for online teaching, right? We have been seeing the advantages, but the problem is India is a still digitally divided country, in the sense that there is a lot of digital divide in our country. According to two statistics that were given in this article, only 8% of rural students and 24% of urban students had regular access to digital education during the pandemic. Among rural students, 37% had stopped studying altogether. Now, these are not good numbers. These are actually very bad numbers. You have 8% in rural and 24% in urban. Even the urban percentage is also not that good. And the most dangerous number that we are seeing, or we have to take into account, is the 37% who had stopped studying altogether. Mind you, there might be some discrepancies in the data, but the trend we have discussed over multiple articles as to how impactful the digital divide in our country has been in terms of the rural and urban. See, what at the end of the day happens is, just because somebody is in an urban area, the only advantage they might have is they might have access to IT infrastructure, but they themselves may not have access to the infrastructure called the mobile phone or the computer or anything. See, just because they are near to some IT infrastructure that enables online education doesn't mean that the individual possesses the capacity to own something that might give them access to that infrastructure. In the case of rural, there are two pronged. One, if they had the mobile phone, they might not have the network connection. In some cases, both are not available. The student might not have the mobile phone altogether. Not only that, even if he had, they don't have proper internet connection. Again, one of the biggest drawbacks is, or at least in the initial stages, is we have seen students suffering year of learning loss, which is key because the foundational literacy and the numeracy that they require, that they need to pursue higher education, to pursue higher classes, is not that strong. So that is the biggest worry of COVID-19 on education. As I said, as many advantages are there with digital education, with that digital divide on the horizon, things are always not going to be equitable. It doesn't mean that we should stop digital education altogether. It should be approached in a very diligent way, where we improve the quality of digital education, all while addressing the digital divide in our country. That is how you ensure and enhance the advantages of digital education in our country, particularly given our circumstances, given our geographies, right, and differences. The best method of teaching, or the best method of ensuring that everybody gets educated in our country, might be, or one of the ways would be, through digital education. That would enable, or that would take away few roadblocks that certain sections of our population experience in their bid to get educated. Again, as many advantages there are with it, there are few disadvantages. That is why we need not only a policy based approach, we also need a participation based approach in this regard too. So this is the announcement from Prime Minister in terms of asking private sector participation in improving quality in government schools. And how they can do it? They can do it by enrolling themselves or offering their contributions through Vidyanjali 2.0 portal. Moving on to the next article, making them pay. So in a move, South Korea had brought in a new piece of legislation which is being dubbed as anti-Google law, that put restrictions on app stores and companies like Google and Apple. So they amended a law that kind of allows more control over companies like Google and Apple. So before getting into speculation, let us understand what this amendment is. So what happens is, when a creator creates an app, whether it's for Android phones or iPhones, they submit their app to social media companies and app stores like Google Play Store and Apple App Store. So what is the general idea behind an app? You purchase the app from either Google Play Store or Apple App Store, and you get that app downloaded into your mobile phone. But apps in today's sphere have this thing or a component called in-app purchases. So what is the rule here from these companies is that if an individual buys any service from your app, from inside your app that you have created and that we are hosting, in order for the user to purchase a particular service that you are providing, they should do it through their in-store payments system. Let us say you have downloaded an app in Google Play Store, and that app is offering a video for 50 rupees, right? If you want to buy that app, what the company is forcing the app developer to do is to direct the payment to Google's payment services. The developer cannot choose which payment service he wants to use. They have to compulsorily use Google's payment system. If the app developer wants to use Bheem, that is the government app, they cannot. They have to use in-store payments app. And as a service that they provide, they charge large percentage of that sales as service charge. Let us say you buy that video from this app for 50 rupees. Google charges anywhere between 10 to 15 rupees as service charge, and the rest is then given to the content creator or the owner of the app. Now, this amendment, which has been brought by the South Korea legislation, means that they cannot do it so. Meaning, if an app developer wants to use a third-party payment system other than what is provided by Apple or Google, they can do so, and either Google nor Apple can force their payment, in-store payment systems on app developers. So this means that if a developer wants to sell something through his app, now he can do it so by partnering with third-party payment systems, not with Google or Apple in-store payment systems. And this law will also check on unfair use of market position. So what are the biggest market players in this domain? Google Play and Apple App Store. They kind of have the monopoly over who can do what on their platforms. If they feel that some app or some company is competing with them, they can simply take them out of their service list, meaning the developer cannot no longer post or publish their apps in their app stores. So because of this market monopoly, Google and Apple have essentially created two different ecosystems that do not interact with one another. As this monopoly is already created by them, they control the experience that user has on their platform. They can make it very easy for them, or they can make it very difficult for them to interact with different ecosystems. But what we are seeing right now is they essentially created ecosystems that do not interact with one another. That is why, because they are trying to monopolize the market, that is, as they are trying to clearly divide the market into two groups, that they then impose their own rules and restrictions on without the say of the government. The governments around the world are trying to regulate them to prevent this monopolization, to protect user interests, and to protect government control on companies like Apple and Google. That is what is happening here. As far as the South Korea's legislation, it is specifically targeted towards in-store payment systems, which were heavily controlled by Google on one side, by Apple on the other side, by taking huge percentage of the sales that an app gets And again, at the end of the day, as a result, the creator, the app creator, the app developer is losing money because of these predatory tactics. Not only that, they are trying to check the unfair use of the market position that they hold. Both occupy the highest percentage of market share. So whatever they say goes. That is what this regulation is trying to do away with. Now these kinds of government oversight over social media companies, particularly either Apple, Google or any other social media companies, is not only limited to South Korea. The biggest piece of action in this regard, or the movement in this regard, is coming from the Australian government, because recently they went to war with Google in regards to Google paying newspapers for using their content on their platform, where we saw Google threaten, Facebook threaten, all these social media companies threaten Australian government by stating that we are going to stop providing our services in your country. But to their credit, the Australian government stood steadfast, and at the end of the day, the Google company and the Australian government came for a compromise, and they started giving money to these news outlets whose content they were posting on their or hosting on their Google news platforms. Now, not only that, they are also launching investigations into unfair trade practices that these companies are pursuing. Not only that, it has been reported that Australia is thinking of bringing in digital payment services such as Apple Pay, Google Pay and WeChat Pay under its regulatory ambit, which is again they are trying to create their own ecosystem, and they are trying to monopolize the market position that they hold. This is why we need government regulation, or at least a little bit of government regulation in this regards. As I said, they got the regulation done in terms of Google and other social media platforms paying for news companies. Now they are trying to bring payment services also under regulatory ambit. Now, in terms of these kinds of digital media laws or social media laws, one of the biggest groupings that is always at the forefront of things is the European Union. They were the first to bring in the GDPR laws, which were the most stringent. Remember, based on the GDPR laws, recently Ireland imposed a lot of fines on Google for their practices, unfair trade practices. That is how strong the GDPR laws are. The GDPR laws are entirely people-centric. They give a lot of leverage over companies in the hands of government, which the governments can use to protect the interests of its citizens. Remember, when the WhatsApp thing was going on between Indian government and the WhatsApp company, we discussed as to how the European Union's citizens were given the option either to opt in or opt out of the updated privacy policies, as when Indians had been given no choice in this regard. Irrespective of how we feel about it, we had to adhere to it. That is what the edge the European Union had over the WhatsApp people because of the GDPR laws. That is why we discussed about how important the data protection laws in our country are. Remember, the data protection laws were first brought in 2019. They were sent to Parliamentary Standing Committee. The Parliamentary Standing Committee had more than 3 or 4 extensions till now, and they haven't come out with their report till this day. I think they are going to get one more extension in the next coming few months or so. That is why data protection laws are very, very, very important. Now see, after the GDPR laws, now they are trying to draft a new law that makes these large companies which act as gatekeepers, right? And they are trying to give these companies a legislation based set of do's and don'ts. You big companies, you can do this and you cannot do this. They are not merely issuing guidelines, they are actually bringing in legislation to regulate these countries. These proposals means that companies should and must provide customers with choice. That is what we lack in our country right now. There is little choice from the consumer perspective. The companies dominate. Either it may be the mobile thing, that is little bit democratic in the sense that you have hundreds of mobile operators in the country, but when it comes to network providers, for whatever reason, the field is getting narrower and narrower. That is why you need to have consumer choice to maintain a competitive pricing and also protect consumer rights. As far as the EU thing is concerned, they are saying that it aims to promote competition and reduce gatekeeper power in the app economy, increase choice, improve quality, and reduce cost for customers. As I said, it should be always centered around protecting the interests of the customer. See, the thing is, because of this regulatory onslaught from various governments around the world, these app store operators are currently on the back foot. They don't know what to do. They're trying to put up a fight, but when countries are unequivocally saying that what you are doing is wrong, you have to adhere to laws and regulations of the land, these companies have little to do or little power over that, because at the end of the day, they are run on profits, and if they lose access to that markets, they lose access to profits. Now, as far as India is concerned, the Competition Commission of India is going after some of these companies because they have ordered investigations into certain companies for their practices, but we have yet to see what would be the outcome of those investigations. Similarly, the Competition Commission of India launched investigations into similar allegations where Indian app developers were being kind of harassed by Google. Harassed in the sense meaning they were trying to undercut or something like that from Google. Now the Competition Commission of India had to launch a probe into it. The investigation seems to be still ongoing. We have to again wait for the outcome. Now, what are the steps that we had taken in that direction? See, we have to regulate these app store operators, right? Indian government is also thinking along those lines. How can you say that Indian government is thinking along those lines? One of the biggest things was our government's approach towards Twitter's IT rules non-compliance thing. Later on, we saw how the government approached the WhatsApp thing, where WhatsApp was not happy with the government giving them an ultimatum as to you have to pull back your updated privacy rules and something like that. So what are the steps that the Indian government has been taking in this regards? We recently announced the promotion or setting up of the open network for digital commerce to democratize e-commerce sites and to provide alternatives to proprietary e-commerce sites. Now again, a lot has to be done from the Indian side, but nonetheless, these steps are positive nonetheless. But as I said, the laws must be concrete and they must always be centered towards protecting consumer rights. That is how you challenge these digital media companies. Otherwise, forget about regulation, forget about compliance. That is the biggest issue you are going to find. Until and unless the penalties for non-compliance are high enough, these companies are going to try to play ball here. Now, the caveat in this pursuit is we have to protect smaller sellers, we have to protect smaller developers, and not only that, it shouldn't destroy the ecosystem. As a result of this, innovation shouldn't take a hit. Whatever the policy pursuit that countries do, they should always protect not only the consumer side of it, but also the business side of it. Thank you. Stay safe. Namaste.
Borthakur IAS Academy. প্রস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা। Borthakur IAS Academy.